Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. I'm here today with our good friend, Jesse Ruben from Generation Lyme. You probably know Jesse from running all of the support groups, from his beautiful talent and all of the songs he put out there for the Lyme community that have touched millions of lives. But Jesse has also raised a ton of money for the Lyme community and has worked behind the scenes at a lot of not-for-profits and a lot of groups to bring money to research and better educate people in the tick-borne disease community. So we're really honored to have you here today, and we can't thank you enough for joining our Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Oh man, I love what you guys do. It's an honor to be here. We finally did it.
Finally, we've
We
had all
made
of you guys on. It's finally the fourth of the Generation Lyme group. So, Jesse, before we get into all the cool stuff you're doing now, just give us a little bit about your background. What was life like as a kid, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up outside Philly. I have a twin sister. I was horrendous at sports, always very musical, came from a very musical family. Took piano lessons for years, switched to guitar in high school. Uh, Went to college for songwriting. I have a songwriting degree, a very expensive, incredibly useless piece of paper that I still use that skill set for. But it was like, I'm gonna age myself, but it was like before cell phones, and we were outside a lot, and like walking through the woods a little bit in Pennsylvania. I remember that was my first experience with ticks, was like coming home when you were like messing around in the woods and never thinking anything of it. But I had no idea about any of this stuff. I was blissfully unaware of it. I was studying just hard enough to keep my parents away from me, and my sister was a genius. And then studied music in college, and now here we are.
I mean, you're saying that the songwriting degree was a waste, but here you are with millions and millions of people loving your music, and especially with your music that's written for the Lyme community. Do you
Yeah.
think that you maybe wouldn't have been as successful as a musician if it weren't for your formal education and your songwriting degree?
Definitely not my formal education. Not so much. I mean, the classes were great, and like practicing and learning in a school environment, I think is really great. But mostly, especially in like I can't speak to anything but going to like an art kind of school. My friends and I were like playfully competitive with each other, so that's what really made us better. It was like, oh my God, he just wrote that. I have to write something better than that. And then so that was what really like pushed us to get better. Definitely having like that background knowledge. And then as far as like my success goes, like my biggest song by far is called "This Is Why I Need You," and that was the first song that I released after I went into remission the first time back in the end of 2015. I actually put the song out like almost exactly 10 years ago, which is kind of nuts. And in the music industry, they're like, never release a song during December, during the holidays. And I did anyway because I didn't care. And yeah, it's been streamed like 40 million times or something, like some outrageous number. And it was on like pop radio. And what was so interesting is like I wrote that song for my wife and for everybody that helped me get through Lyme. So like literally my nurses and my doctors and my friends that became my support, and the person who called me in the middle of the night because he heard what was happening to me, who was like a friend of a friend of somebody I went to high school with, who was like, "Hey, I think you might have Lyme disease." And I took the call in a hotel room. Like I was in some party I didn't want to be at in a hotel because I felt horrible. And that sort of started my journey. And it takes a lot of people to get one person through 3 years of hell. Like
Yeah.
it takes a lot of people. And so that song to me was very much like writing about having gratitude for those people. And it's been interesting to see the way that other people have taken it and put it into their own lives. So like I've played that songs at like weddings. I've played that songs at like 50th wedding anniversaries, birthday parties. Like I just met a woman. I was playing in North Carolina, and I met a woman, and she had this like brown blouse on that had black stripes on it. And then when she got close to me, I saw that the black stripes were actually just the lyrics to that song over and over again,
Wow.
because she had lost her husband 10 years ago, and she listens to that song every day to remind herself of her husband.
Wow.
And so it's like, to me, the song, I guess it's kind of a love song in a way, but mostly it was like, thank you and I appreciate you. And so it's just been interesting to see the way that the response to it was amazing. I wish every song that I put out had that kind of response, but for that song in particular was really special because taking 3 years off is not like a great career move for an independent musician, and I really believed in it. I was really proud of it. It was the first song that I had written in years where I remember being like, all right, I still got it. Like I was like, because I used to worry that like whatever before I had a diagnosis or even after I got the Lyme diagnosis, I was like, what if it's like eating away at the part of my brain that has creative ideas? What if I never write a song again? So it was a big deal for me in a lot of ways, and the fact that so many people have heard it is very, very special for sure.
Yeah, so for everybody listening, I'm gonna repeat, it's the name of the song is "This Is Why I Need You" by obviously you, Jesse Ruben, and we're gonna put a link to it in the show notes as well, so people can listen. Because one of the things, just for everybody listening, Rich had Rich is an attorney, so he had a work crisis. He had to take care of a client tonight, but his biggest thing was, I was so excited to talk to Jesse. I absolutely love his music, and Rich is an old man, right? Like so it's just so interesting. He's like, I love his music. It is so good. So people need to go listen to it and give you some love on all of your music because it's super, super good. And especially if you're in the Lyme community, because you wrote a lot of it. I think specifically you wrote Monster, This Is Why I Need You, and You're Not Alone Anymore directly from your experience with Lyme, right?
Yeah, for sure. So You're Not Alone Anymore hasn't even been released. I played that song at a conference in Amsterdam for Lyme patients, and it was the first time I realized, like, as bad as it is in America, and it is really bad in America, like in some parts of Europe, they're like 20 years behind, and it was like this giant. I mean, there were like hundreds or maybe like 1,000 people there, and the whole front row was like people who were rolled in on beds because like they didn't have the energy to sit up, and it was really, really emotional. And then so I just put out an album in October, but actually that album was finished right at the beginning of COVID, and then it sat on my hard drive for 4 years because I got sick again. And so I finally started feeling better like 6, 7 months ago. And so I just decided to put it out. So there's a song on there called Monster, which is like 100% about my experience. And then there's also a song called Trying My Best, which is really when I went into remission the first time, people I was still such mentally like such a mess, and people would say, "Oh, you need to give yourself some time. Oh, you need to cut yourself some slack." And that's like really easy to say and really hard to do. And in fact, it's only recently, like I wrote that song years ago and then just put it out, and it's literally only been in the last 3 months where I've been like working with psychiatrists and therapists, and I've actually, this is not medical advice, but I started doing ketamine treatments, and I think my nervous system, people would say like you can't choose your situations, you can only choose like how you react to them or how. But it turns out when your nervous system is so jacked up because you've been sick for so long and you're so angry and resentful and disappointed and sad, and you just like are carrying that around all the time, you can't actually just think your way out of a negative attitude. I was just like constantly at like a 9.9. And so the ketamine therapy has been like amazing. But anyway, so trying my best was me going, that's really good advice. I can't do that. And I have found again, like that was very much written from my line perspective, but everyone's dealing with something, whether it's money, relationships, body issues, negative self-talk, like just being in the world in 2025. Like everyone's
Chris.
got stuff. And so that song has really connected with a lot of people. But Monster was like, that was the one I was going to leave off the album
Well, I'm glad
because
you didn't because that's my favorite. So I'm glad you didn't.
thank you. But that was sort of like I was picturing my friends being like, "Really? You're still talking about this? Like are you you're still talking about Lyme disease and you're still running these support groups?" And what's really crazy about that song is that when I first got sick, like I had really bad brain fog, but the later I stayed up, the better it would get. So I was
Yep.
staying till like 6, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning and sleeping all day. So I was just going through my like voice notes one night, and I found one from back then from like 4:45 in the morning, and I have no memory of this whatsoever. And it was the first verse of that song. And I just was like, "What is this?" I started crying immediately, and I sort of sat on it for years. I would listen to it for years, and then finally I decided one day to finish it. And it was really healing for me to finish that song because it just talks about being stuck and not knowing what's going on and arguing with doctors. And then the end of the song, the end of the song is really me like calling out my family because I just did not have the support that a lot of people have. Like, again, this was over 10 years ago. And it's like Lyme is much cooler now, and a lot more people know about it now that like Bieber and Justin Timberlake have it. But like my parents were not on board for, and I've talked about this before, but
Yeah.
and they have since apologized, but like they they're just in the generation of like you just got to go to the best doctor. Like if you don't know what's wrong with you, then we got to go to the best doctor. And it's like sometimes the doctors just don't know. And
Yeah.
so I had a really hard time with that. I had other support from other people, but with my parents, it was definitely tough for a long time. And that the end of that song is the lyric is, "Doesn't it kill you to see me this way?" And then, "Why doesn't it kill you to see me this way?" Like, look at me, I lost all this weight. I turned gray. I was like, oh, I'm never gonna get better. And then I was very fortunate that I did, and it took years of therapy. But that song and the visuals for it and has really resonated with a lot of people, especially in the Lyme world. Because if you don't get it, you just don't get it,
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
it's one of the songs that I'm most proud of, and I'm proud of myself for putting it out. And you wish that every song has the "This is why I need you" 30 million streams, whatever, but also I think people are finding that song when they need it, and I still get really beautiful messages. Some of them are really beautiful, and then some of them are brutal. And I'm sure you guys have the same thing, like, right? Like, "Thank you so much for your song. Here's my situation."
Yep.
And like, "Here's how sick I am. Here's how much money I have. Here's how long I've been treating. I don't know if I'm going to get better." And then sometimes it's like, "I feel great now, but it reminds me of when I was really sick." And so that's part of doing what we do, and trying to reach these people is there's just such a wide range of people's experiences, and a lot of them are really hard.
Yeah, and Jesse, I couldn't agree more. And you and I were talking about this offline about people losing hope about, I don't know, am I ever going to get better? And in timing wise, after we've interviewed them already, but after this podcast launches, we have a little bit of a mini series coming up with researchers and doctors. And we encourage people to listen to that because some of this research that's being done is blowing me away with new treatments, new testing, and just technology like artificial intelligence and how they're using that to help the Lyme community. So, we do want to give hope there. But let's pull back again because that was just beautiful, everything you shared. But let's talk about what life was like as a kid and then as you got older. When did you start to get sick? Walk us through, transitioning from childhood to adulthood, when you
Yeah.
got sick and what that was like.
So I was living in New York. I was like in my early to mid 20s, which is the best time to be living in New York. I had just run my third New York City Marathon. I used to run the New York City Marathon every year for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation because one of my friends had suffered a spinal cord injury. And then when I got into Remission, like one of the first things I did was convince GLA to have a marathon team, and I ran 5 New York City marathons for them, which was really special. But I just finished my third marathon. I was in like the best shape of my life. My career was really in a great spot. I was selling a decent amount of tickets. I had started touring more. And the first thing that happened to me was I walked up a flight of subway stairs and I was out of breath. And I thought that was super weird because I thought I was in really good shape. And then sometimes it would happen and sometimes it wouldn't. And then there were times where like I remember we were like on our way to some like dinner or something, and I just turned to my friends and I was like, guys, I'm just gonna turn around and go home. I'm feeling a little nauseous. I just have to lie down. And then I started dating my girlfriend, now wife. So we started dating in November 4th. And Christmas Day 2012, I mean, I know the day I got sick. Christmas Day 2012. What did Jews do on Christmas? We went to the movies. We saw that Les Mis movie, which no offense if you like that movie, probably because of what I associate it with and what the impact it had on my life. I did not enjoy it. I had like a little scratch in my throat, like I was gonna get sick. Then you're like, oh no, I'm gonna wake up sick tomorrow. And all of a sudden, I was dating this girl for 2 weeks, and I have this flu or fever that lasts like a month and a half, and I'm sleeping on the wooden floor of her bedroom because it's cooler than the bed, and it lasted forever. And then everything was sort of fine. I was good for a couple months in early 2012, and then more and more things started happening where I would get like these headaches, and then I'd get dizzy, and then I had this crawling sensation under my skin in my hands that was crazy. And at that point, I went to my PCP, got all these tests, everything was negative. I went back to my PCP, again, more tests, everything was negative. Then I started going to see specialists. I was diagnosed with vitamin D deficiency, possibly fibromyalgia, possibly lupus, all these things. Um, and I sort of like it culminated in, again, like my career was great, and it culminated in my first like full country like US tour that was like a month, and I was driving around in a van with a bunch of people headlining shows. And I brought my buddy Rich with me as like a tour manager because Rich is a big strong dude. And what I would do is I would sleep in the van all day. And then when it was my turn to play, he would like pick me up and throw me onto the stage
Wow.
because I couldn't. And I would do my set, and then he would drag me back and throw me back in the van. And I got back from that tour in like October of 2012, and I called my parents and I was just like, I'm out. I'm not going to work. I can't work anymore. And luckily, at that point, I randomly found, I've tried to find it since, but some random website with a PDF of like possible Lyme symptoms. It was like on a website that looked like it was from the 80s, you know? And it was the first time that I had seen everything that I had going on in one document, like the headaches, the nausea, air hunger was there. And I finally put a word to what that was. Brain fog, which I used to say, like, it feels like there's a cloud inside my head. Like, that's how I would refer to it to people. And all my friends thought I was insane. And so the, like, anxiety, depression, mood changes, just everything that was happening to me was on this document that said Lyme disease. And so then I started asking everyone I knew, like, who do you know with Lyme disease? And then I would talk to them and be like, have you gotten better? What helped? Who did you go see? And then I started treatment 2013, and it, took about 3 years to turn into a human being again.
So let's real quick. So that was around Christmas of 2012. You were working, you got really sick. How did you, I just, maybe I missed that part. How did you find that website? You were just searching your symptoms and
Oh,
stumbled upon this 1980s like website?
dude, all I was doing was like researching. I was on Reddit. I was like deep into Reddit. I was just looking up symptoms and rare illnesses, and that's all I did for like months was try and figure out what's so crazy is that like you and I can talk to someone for 15 seconds and be like, you might have this thing, you know?
Yeah.
But back then, and by the way, like I've said that to people in like upstate New York, Long Island, Connecticut, and they'll say, "Oh no, I don't have Lyme. I have these 11 unrelated autoimmune issues." And I'm just like, "Come on, like, come on." But
Yep.
yeah, yeah, so I found that website. No idea how I did because you know you're thinking like, am I gonna die? I'm the only one who has this. Like, has anyone? Am I the only person in the world that's ever gone through this before? Meanwhile, I'm in Brooklyn in 2013. Like, I could have thrown a rock in any direction 100 feet and probably somebody had it. But
Yeah.
I didn't know that, and I'm just like laying in bed all day. It was a tough time. The whole thing was a tough time. And so then it was like, okay, I think I have Lyme. And then I went to a doctor, explained my symptoms, and they were like, "You probably have Lyme." Got the Western blot test, which came back lab positive, New York State negative,
Hmm.
obviously. So none of my treatment was covered by insurance because it was deemed medically unnecessary, which, the American medical system we could talk about for a very long time. And yeah, I barely worked. There were a couple times where I forced myself to do it, and there was actually once the time that my parents got closest to getting it was they tore my high school down and they rebuilt it, and it was like they wanted to have like a concert to rebuild, in the auditorium of the new version of my high school, and they asked me to play, and I finished playing and I came off stage and my parents were like, "You didn't want to be doing that." And I was like, "Nope." And they were like, "We've never seen you on stage not wanting to be on stage." And I was like, "This is what I've been trying to tell you, you know." And that was one of the hardest parts, is like performing is the one of the things that I love the most in the world. I That's a responsibility that I take very seriously, of trying to take care of people and give them what they need and give them what they didn't even know they need. And I love making people cry and I love making people laugh. And so to just put that all on hold for a long time, or do it and not want to be doing it, it was hard. It was brutal. It was just so this thing is just designed. The way that I describe Lyme disease to people who don't really get it is, Lyme disease takes every aspect of your life that brings you joy and it robs you of that thing. So like, if you like reading books, nope. If you like watching movies, nope. If you like whatever, playing video games, building model trains, hanging out with friends, going out to eat, like, you can do those things and you can push yourself to do those things, but you're not doing them and enjoying them the way that you normally would. And I forgot all the words to my songs. Like, I didn't play the guitar barely for like a really long time. And at that point, my whole identity was singer-songwriter. That's all I was doing, was working and trying to play shows. And so then it's like, what is a singer-songwriter that isn't singing and writing songs and touring? And so it really messed with my identity too. It's like, am I just a sick person now? It's like that what I am? So sorry, I get very long-winded on these
No, no,
questions.
I would interrupt you, please. This is on point. So this is about a 9 month window with 15 doctors before you got diagnosed,
Yeah.
and you mentioned all your symptoms. But can you talk about what was your scariest symptom? Because the one that really made you feel like I'm losing myself, and really made you just really wigged out. Because we know the symptoms can be so diverse and so broad. But I'm curious what your worst symptom was during this time.
I mean, that's so funny because obviously it changed like every day. My short-term memory basically went away. And that was really scary. Like I left my apartment to like force myself to go have brunch with a couple friends like 6 blocks from my apartment. Forgot where I was going and how to get there, and had like a mental breakdown on the sidewalk. But like the one that hit me the most was the fatigue. Was like, there would be days where I would be okay, and then there would be days where it would take me 6 hours just to get the energy to sit up after waking up. Like, the word we have is fatigue, but like, fatigue to me in normal conversation is like, oh, I haven't slept well for a couple days. Like, the way I'm talking about it is like, I couldn't move, and that was really weird and scary. And then there would be days where I would be like okay, and I'd be like, "Oh, I'm out of it and it's gone." And then come back the next day, and that was really hard. But I think the fatigue, the brain fog, the memory stuff. I mean, the crawling under my skin too. That used to drive me insane. I used to picture like little bugs crawling under my skin, and then I would try and like I ended up like taking like really hot baths. I thought I could like boil them away, and I ended up like giving myself burns. Like you go crazy. You go
Yep.
crazy, you know? Like in the song in Monster, somebody who I've known for a long time in the Lyme community texted me afterwards laughing because one of the lines from the song is, "I'll do anything it takes. I'll light myself on fire." And I used to just say that to people. Like, if you had said to me, the only way we're going to get rid of your symptoms, and this is 100% foolproof, is we douse you in gasoline and we light you on fire, I would have been like, hand me the match. Like, hand me the, I'll, give me the lighter. I don't, so it just, like, you get to a point where there's only so much that a human can take.
Yeah.
So
But
yeah.
But Jesse, what I find interesting is because you said a couple of things, right? The first one was one of your early symptoms was you'd be walking up the stairs in the subway and be out of breath, and you're a marathon runner. That's not normal, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I experienced as well as a runner. I was having exercise induced symptoms, and I
Yeah.
think that was my first symptom and your first symptom. So I think that's an important sign to share with people that they're aware of that for their loved ones and family members as a potential sign of Lyme disease early on.
Yeah.
But another thing you said that stuck with me was, and this is very common, you had the most clarity at night. You could sleep during the day and you couldn't sleep at night. And at night, you were awake and you had your moments. When you had your moments of clarity, generally, I think it was like late night, early morning, and you felt like you were yourself. What kind of epiphanies did you have about what was going on? Because when you're thinking clearly and then you think back to what happened during the day, that's like a scary experience, right? Because I know I've been there. So, what do those night thought sessions really teach you about your illness?
I felt like two different people. I felt like what was happening to me during the day was like a different person entirely. And I still had the physical symptoms at night, but at least like I could put a sentence together and I could that's why I was doing all my research late at night. But it was part of it was just like there was no rhyme or reason for it, and it just felt so unbelievably cruel. And I've talked to a lot of people who when they've been in that situation, they have like they come to some level of like peace with what's happening to them, especially including like people who are religious, where they're just like, this is part of a plan that's bigger than me, and I just have to figure my way through it. And but there are just some people that handle it and focus on positive thinking and stuff. That was never me, not for 1 second. So I would be pissed and scared. I think the during the day my brain couldn't put thoughts together, and I was so like out of it and dizzy. I don't know how I got most days I don't know how I got to the doctor. Like walked to the subway, got on the subway, got off at the right stop, like stumbling around.
Jesse, were you living at home with your family or your girlfriend at this point?
No, I was in an apartment in Brooklyn. I was sharing an apartment with a roommate and my
So independent, essentially.
yeah, I mean, I do not think moving home would have been a positive experience for me at that time, especially because these I like a lot of people jump doctors. I only went to, are we allowed to shout out doctors on
Yeah,
here?
absolutely. Yeah.
So I went to the Morrison Center on 31st and Park, and I've talked to so many people who've like jumped from doctor to doctor to doctor, and there was just something about this clinic. I mean, I know what it is. The first time I called them was during that tour, and I was like, I have 1 day between a show in Virginia and a show in Boston. I need to come in and see you guys that day. And they were like, but we don't have any appointments that day. And they kept their office open like an extra 45 minutes so that I could be seen. And to me, that was like the kindest thing anybody could ever do, to the point where when I got better and I ran the New York City Marathon again for the first time, much slower than before, by the way. I called the New York Roadrunners who put on the marathon and explained to them my situation. And I asked for an extra medal. And in the office, in a drawer, in some drawer in one of the offices in that facility is a New York City Marathon medal from like 2016 or something. But I just had a lot of faith in them, and uh, but yeah, at night it was I felt like my even though I was sick, I felt like myself because my brain was back. Like
Yep.
You know, when you can't put a sentence together, or like you start a sentence and then forget what you were talking about by the, halfway through. I mean, that's scary stuff. Especially like I have Alzheimer's in my family. I'm worried about that. Like it's just there's so much stress. There's so much to worry about all the time. And so those moments of clarity where I would keep myself awake, like I'd be exhausted and I'd force myself to stay up well into the morning sometimes, and then sleep all day. And except when I was going to the doctor and coming home and going to the doctor and coming home, and that's what I did for like most of 3 years, from like 26 to almost 30.
So when you got diagnosed, did was that with the Morrison Center or was that with another doctor and then you chose to go to the Morrison Center?
No, that was with the Morrison Center. That was my Western blot was lab test positive, New York negative, and then we did an IGeneX test, and that came back positive for Lyme, Babesia, and Mycoplasma. Never Bartonella. I skipped out on Bartonella, but I had really bad night sweats from the Babesia, really bad for like a really long time.
So once you got the diagnosis and you were at the Morrison Center, what was your first course of action to treat Lyme and Babesia and Mycoplasma?
Yeah, so I did 6 months of oral doxy. So part of it is it was so long ago that I don't remember everything I did, because at one point it was my whole life was just my pill schedule on my phone, and I was taking like 80 things a day. It was like right when I wake up, before breakfast, with breakfast, after breakfast, before lunch, during lunch, after lunch, in the afternoon, before dinner, during dinner, after dinner, after dinner but before bedtime, at bed. It just I remember a buddy stayed with me. I went home to visit my parents or something, and my buddy was staying at my apartment. And he was like, "Why does your room look like a pharmacy?" And I sort of had to explain it to him. But the first thing I did 6 months of oral doxy, and that didn't really help. And then I did 18 months of IV azithromycin, and that sort of sometimes helped, but not really. And I remember having an argument with somebody that was like, I think it was, I don't know who it was, doesn't matter. But they were like, well, you're doing all these treatments and you're spending all this money, but it's not working. Like, why are you doing it? And I said to them, you don't understand. I have to do something. I have to be trying something. Because if I do nothing, this isn't going to go away. But if I do something, maybe it'll help. Maybe it's the 16th month of this treatment. And also, you know this, and a lot of people listening know this. You try something, it makes you feel worse, but are you getting worse, or are you just in a herx and you're actually long term getting better and you have to push through that, which is also such a mental, you know, mind thing. And so dealing with that was really tough. And so then I was doing Chinese herbs, I was doing supplements, vitamins, because, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin B, everything was down. And after like 2.5 years, they sort of got to. I was being treated by Jerry Simons, who's really brilliant out of that office. He also works in Long Island. And he sort of came to me and was like, we sort of got to the end of the stuff that we know will work, and we're going to have to start doing more experimental stuff. And I was like, great, give it to me. I don't care what it is. And it's much more common now. But at the time, it was sort of an experimental treatment that had been effective on cancer patients, which was chelation and ozone. And so I did a combination of chelation and ozone, and I knew immediately that it was the right thing. Like immediately. First of all, I did it once and I was like, I'm cured, you did it. And they all started laughing at me. They were like, you've been so sick for so long, you don't remember what being a person feels like. And so I had to do it like a couple times a week for a couple months. And then, yeah, like 99 point whatever of my symptoms went away. And I was going to see other doctors too, like not Lyme literate doctors, but ones my parents wanted me to see and stuff. And they were basically like, I mean, you're saying something's wrong, but if there is, like, I can't find it. So you'll probably have to live with this. And my family like tried to have an intervention with me of like, you're gonna need to get back to work. And I'm just like laughing at them. because people just don't know. They're not bad people. It took me a long time to realize that too. Most doctors are not evil people. They're not trying to get you to suffer. They just are uninformed. They're just
Yeah.
uninformed. Um, but yeah, chelation and ozone, I don't know why it worked. I've recommended it to hundreds of people. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it does nothing, sometimes it makes them worse. Like, it's complete luck of the draw. What I say to people is like, you just have to try stuff until something works. That's your only job, is to try stuff, you know?
Yeah, and so the chelation specifically, obviously the oral doxycycline antibiotic, right? That's the general standard for
Yeah.
acute Lyme disease. 8 months of IV azithromycin. That's more of a heavy
Eight,
antibiotic.
18 months of IV.
Oh,
Oh,
18
actually,
months.
yeah, 18. But the reason I did azithromycin is because the one appointment, my mom came with me to the Morrison Center. And afterwards, she was like, I don't know if I trust those people. And I was like, I don't agree with you. But after the doxy, they wanted me to try bicillin. And it was much cheaper for me to do it at home, obviously, than to come into the office and do it. But you got to give yourself injections, and it's a big needle. It's a big needle. And I remember, like, you have to do it once in the office, like in front of a nurse, before they'll let you do it at home. And I remember being like, I don't know if I can do this. And the nurse was like, do you want to get better? And I was like, yes. And she was like, do it. And I was like, ah, wham. And I just like shoved this needle into me. And then the next day, I woke up completely covered in hives, and that's how I found out that I was allergic to penicillin, which my mother knew,
Oh man.
but didn't bring up during the appointment. But what was so crazy about that was like the hives and the itchiness made the tingling and some of the fatigue go away. Like I was
Hmm.
feeling itchy and hivey, and so I went into the Morrison Center. I was like, well, I don't care if I'm allergic to it. Like it makes me feel different. Like if I would get a cold and then it would feel like I had a cold for a second and not just that I had Lyme disease, and that felt like a vacation. And so I remember going into them and being like, I don't care if I'm allergic to this, can I just keep taking it? And they were like, well, if you keep injecting yourself with something you're allergic to, you're gonna die. So no, you can't keep taking it. So that's why I switched to the azithromycin, because that was like sort of the comparable thing that I wasn't gonna react to. But that, yeah, and then that was like, but also antiparasitics, Mepron, which to this day is the most disgusting thing I have ever put into my body. If you are listening to this and you have taken Mepron, I am so sorry. That taste lasts forever, and it's so gross. And if it had helped, I would have been fine with it. But yeah, it never did. But I mean, I did everything: the antifungals, antibiotics, and everything, anti everything, just to try and kickstart my immune system and deal with mold stuff. And mold, that was like not a big issue 10 years ago. People were not talking about mold in relation to Lyme disease when I was getting treatment. And now it's like everywhere, and everyone's talking about it, and everyone's concerned about it, as they should be. Um,
So real quick, so chelation and ozone were the two things that really helped you the most. And chelation is really chelating or pulling out heavy metals from your body and allowing you to detox them to eliminate these toxic heavy metals from your body, to clean them out of your body and
yep.
detox them out, pee, sweat, right, whatever. So looking back, do you think heavy metals were inhibiting you from getting better with the other treatment you had before that? Is that the thought process, do you
I
think?
mean, logically, yes, but again, my heavy metal numbers were not like crazy off the charts high. They were like above normal, but well within quote unquote normal range, which is hilarious that we have all these tests. And if the medical system makes it so black and white and everyone's different, and they're like, oh, you're within a normal range. And it's like, well, the highest is 100 and I'm at 99. And they're like, it's normal. It wasn't even like that. My heavy metals were slightly elevated. I don't know if it was a combination of the chelation and the ozone. I never did them individually. I only did them together. Um, I don't know why it worked. I don't
Got
care.
it. But it
Like
helped. Yeah.
for
Yep.
sure. And I'm assuming that the heavy metals in my system played a part in it, and who knows where that came from. And uh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I meet people all the time who have been sick for so much longer than that, and like mine was like 3 years, and it was really tough, really really tough.
And just for everybody listening, the ozone essentially is an IV, right? I mean, there's different ways to receive it. I'm thinking yours is an IV ozone.
Yeah, so basically they would give me the chelation IV, and then they put the bag on the ground so that it would fill up with my blood, and then there's a machine that would turn oxygen O2 into ozone O3, which they would pull out into these big plastic vials and put it in the bag with my blood and sort of shake it up, and then put it back in. And the ozonated something about the ozonated blood cells would get rid of whatever was going on with me. And then even to the point where like even like 6 months to a year after I was in remission, if like my immune system was down and my symptoms would start coming back and I could feel that fatigue coming on or the brain fog or something, I'd go back and get another treatment and it would totally go away. It
Yeah,
was
ozone is a powerful substance, and people have used it with varying degrees of success, but more so than not, we've heard success stories with ozone.
yeah.
It does stimulate healing and boost oxygen in your blood, and that's a good quality to help fight off all these pathogens that are in your body. So it makes sense. And you did touch on, Jesse, that you did some antiparasitics as well. Did that help? Because that's something that we hear a lot in this community, where antiparasitics are a key part of their healing journey. I'm curious what your thoughts are in your specific journey, how it helped you.
Nothing. Nothing helped. Like
Not the Mepron, not the antiparasitics, none of that.
antifungals, antivirals, none of the supplements, none of the Chinese herbs, none of the, all the normal, the knotweed and the, like
Yep.
all that stuff, the Buhner protocol, all that kind of stuff. None of it, none of it made it. Maybe there were some like fluctuations where I would have like better days than others, but never like, oh, I'm coming to the end of this
Got it. So
until, yeah,
this is about a 3-year window, though, right? So it's 2012, around 2013, you start your treatment. So what, 13, 14, 15? And
yeah,
by 16, you're in remission. Is that about right?
yeah,
Okay. So now you're 30, you're in remission,
yeah.
and that's your first go around. So walk us through transitioning back to life and what that was like from being so sick for so long, and then how everybody in your family and your social circle received that, and what that was like, kind of transitioning back into this state of normalcy.
Yeah, it took a really long time, and I think when it comes to Lyme disease, like because the illness itself is so devastating, there's not a lot of conversation around remission and what it's like to go back to being in the real world. Like I like socially it was completely different for me because like I didn't have anything to talk about besides being sick for the last 3 years. I really learned this lesson the hard way with my family, but then also with a lot of my friends too. Like, not everyone is in our lives for everything. And so there were a lot of people that I was very close to who really pulled away during that time. And again, it took me a long time to realize they're not bad people. They just like couldn't handle it or didn't want to deal with the reality of it. Like if your only experience with sickness is linear, like I get sick, I go to the doctor, I take a test, the test is positive, I take a pill, I get better. Like if that's your experience with disease, there's this undercurrent if you are like still sick and still sick and still sick. There's this undercurrent of like, well, what are you doing wrong? And sort of like blaming the victim a little bit. So it was weird for a long time. And like playing shows was weird because I was still angry. I was angry at the medical system. I was angry that I lost these years. I was angry that it took so long. I was angry that I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be. I felt like I felt like, well, now that I'm better, my success is owed to me. Like I'm going to be a superstar now. And that didn't work out right away. So I was pissed about that. Like family functions were really awkward. Um, and just like meeting someone new and like, what do I like? So what's been going on? And, like, what do I tell people? How much do I tell people? How often? Not to mention, like, with Jen, my wife, because we didn't move in together until after that. But like it really took a toll on her, like a lot. And I used to say horrible things to her, like I don't want to hear your problems because I don't have the bandwidth to care about your problems. Like I was saying to this person that I loved more than anyone in the world, literally, I don't care about what you care about because I'm too sick. And I look back on some of those comments and I know that I was doing the best that I could at the time in my situation. And like I had to take responsibility for a lot of stuff. And there are still things that come up from that time and later. And um, that transition, it took me it took me a couple years to feel like I was back to being like quote unquote myself. You never get you know, people say like I just want to be me again. You're not ever gonna do that. Like I'm not the same person I was before I got sick. And by the way, I got sick again during the pandemic and that was like a whole thing. But like people when people would say to me like, "Well, think about when you're better, like how empathetic you'll be." And I was like, I was a nice person before all of this." You know, like I didn't need this to empathize with people, but it you feel like an alien. Like you're in social situations and it's like I haven't been around 15 people who don't have Lyme disease in years. Like what am I doing here? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to act? It was sort of similar to when COVID ended and people started getting like being social again and like nobody knew what to do. But it's a challenging process. Obviously, one that I would much rather have than dealing with the illness itself, but being in remission also, by the way, like the constant fear that at any moment the bottom's going to drop out. And that lasted years. Like I
And I
didn't
think a lot of that, Jesse, though, is your nervous system still, right? Because although physically you might be better, a lot of those ingrained neural pathways and a lot of those sort of trauma responses are still there, despite the fact that you were feeling better physically and may have brought down the microbial load. You know, you're still struggling with a dysregulated nervous system.
totally. And which I think just got worse over time, but like I'd wake up and be like, cause when the Lyme was really bad, I'd wake up and then I'd be okay for like a quarter of a second and then it would like wash over me. So for years I'd wake up and be like, uh, are we okay? But like it was always in the back of my head, like, oh no, I'm feeling tired. Is it coming back? Oh no, like I'm getting a headache. Is it coming? And that's just a trauma response, you know? And
Yeah.
I didn't touch a lawn for over a year. Like I didn't touch a lawn, and I would like walk past Central Park and like be thinking in my head to all these people, "What are you doing? Like what are you doing? You don't understand," because they don't. And that was like a big deal too of like being in parks and outside with people. And I mean there are still parts of the world like when I go to like perform in Connecticut, like I don't even want to get out of the car in Connecticut. Long Island, you know, upstate New York, some like rural parts of Philly, like
Wait, you perform on Long Island?
I've played a bunch of them.
Oh man, you got to let me know. You got to text me when you're out on Long Island, even in New York City. We got to come see you. We'll come into the city. We'll come in. You
I
know,
would
just let
love
us
that.
know. We got to come watch you.
Lyme patients are my favorite people to play for because they're my target audience, you know, like they just get it more than anybody. But yeah, it's I mean, we just moved to Atlanta because my wife is an actor. I'm going to shout out my wife here. She's an actress and she's on a we moved to Atlanta because she got a lead on the first new soap opera in 25 years. It's called Beyond the Gates. And she plays a nurse named Ashley Morgan who has a heart of gold and is deeply entrenched in a love triangle. My wife makes out with muscly men on television for money.
How do you feel about that, Jesse? I don't know. I'm not sure I'd like that.
That is, I knew what I was signing up for, and the last thing I would want to do is like ever say or do anything that would like get in the way of her pursuing her dream. But it was similar to like becoming going into remission was a lot like moving to a new city, where it's like I don't know these people, they don't know anything about me. Like, how do I get back into being a human being again. Like I felt like it was like learning to walk again, metaphorically, you know?
Yeah. And so now this is 2016 to 2020, right?
Yeah.
Your remission years before the COVID relapse, and we're going to talk about that. But tell us about, so now you move in together while you're in remission. How do you repair the damage that was done in your relationship with your then girlfriend and now wife? And how is your career evolving and what's happening over this 4 year window before the pandemic?
So this is why I Need You started taking off and was doing really well. And that was just from, I was so determined to get people to hear that song. And luckily, something about that song, people were like, I would have not a ton of like Spotify listeners, but the people who were listening to it would listen to it like over and over and over and over and over again. And that was sort of a sign that like there was something there. And then it got on some playlist, and then it got on. Honestly, if you want the honest truth about how that song got successful, is I hired a PR company and they wasted thousands of dollars from me and did nothing. And then I uh, came up with I created a fake, this, if you're in the arts, this is a hack that's going to save your career. I came up with a email address for a person who does not exist named Hallie Brooks. And Hallie Brooks emailed every single radio station, blog, playlist, YouTube playlist, every place that would like that where like This Is Why I Need You was appropriate.
Hmm.
And Hallie Brooks did a great job, and people started reviewing it, and people started playlisting it, and then all of a sudden it was getting on bigger and bigger playlists, and then it started getting pop radio in Asia. I got signed to Universal Asia out of the Philippines.
Wow.
I went over there twice. I was playing in malls. I did like mall shows. That was crazy. And and then meanwhile, like at home was really hard because there were a lot of things we hadn't talked about. Some of it was really healing in that we did a lot of stuff together. Like one of the times I went to Amsterdam to perform, like she came with me and they interviewed us together about like what it's like to be in a couple. But there were a lot of things that had happened in those years that I was not present for, like her family events. Like she just spent so many visits with her family where I wasn't there, and like birthdays and weddings, and I missed a lot of these things. And um, it it says a lot about her that she stuck around. It says a lot about her that we're still married, to be honest. Like, so my career stuff was going pretty well, and at home it was hard, and it was hard for a long time. Even though I was doing well career wise, I felt like it was owed to me because I had suffered, and so it was never enough. And when it's never enough, it became my whole life was like, this was ambition. And when your whole life is ambition, it doesn't leave a lot of room for your partner. And that's something that I've just been realizing in the last like couple of months, is like that's what I've been doing for years and years of like the like in my head it was like, if I get famous enough, the suffering will have been worth it. When the truth is, doing stuff like this and doing stuff like Generation Lyme and putting out music like Monster, like those things are what actually make it worth it, is people and being able to help them and put it something they can't put into words so they feel seen, and bringing people together in community. But for years it was like, no, I got to sell out stadiums, and that coupled with like my nervous system, yeah, man, I was brute. Like probably the last time I was on your podcast with the other Gen Line people, like I was having a really tough time back then,
Yeah.
hiding it pretty well, but it was really hard.
Yeah. And but I mean, through all this, what was your communication like with your wife? Because was she pushing you? Were you guys communicating? Because it seems like this is a lot. And I think you're being too hard on yourself, that there obviously had to be some sort of communication in good times, because you went from being you just met her.
Yeah.
Within a few months, you got this multi-month flu, then you're getting really sick. Then she stays with you for three years until you get into remission. Now you're having success as a musician. but there must be some good in communication occurring in this 4-year window before COVID as well.
So thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. I think she would say the same thing. I just, a lot of it is like, I just feel really bad. We never got to have like a honeymoon phase, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it was 4 weeks and then it was gone. So I did a lot of apologizing. We went to therapy together, obviously. And
Yep.
a lot of it was like her being like, you did this and you did this and you did this. Um, and I I felt like I owed it to her to have it be okay. And I think that happens a lot. That comes up a lot at Generation Lyme meetups is like not wanting to be a burden. And I think that I was a burden. Even she handled it amazingly and she was so generous and but you become I felt like I became a burden at some point where the person she fell in love with just wasn't there. So for me, it was like showing her like I'm here, this is who I am, I'm fun and actually like not miserable and all this stuff. So we talked a lot and speaking at conferences together was really healing for us because couples would come up afterwards and say they were in similar situations and um there were times where like people would reach out to me and I'm sure you get, people who are sick reaching out to you all the time. So people would reach out to me and sometimes they would ask if their partners could speak to Jen and she would be really generous with her time. And I think her realizing the more that she got how big this was and how many people it was impacting and that it wasn't just this thing that was happening in our house, I think that was really helpful for her. Um, and she's also just amazing, so that really helped a lot. But yeah, there were times we had a lot of good stuff too, but underneath it, like it did a lot of damage. Like it the way that I would describe it back then was like it broke me in a way that has never fully healed until maybe now, you know.
Yeah, but I would I would counter argue that with that it may have broke you, but you're stronger now than you would have been without it, right? Not saying that it was that,
Yeah.
it wasn't a painful and miserable experience, but how I look at myself, Jesse, is who I am today is not who I would have been if I didn't get sick. And I am happier with who I am today in hindsight, looking back to where I would have been if I didn't get sick. Does that make sense? So like, if
Yeah.
looking back with the 2020 vision, I like the person I am now better than the person I would have been if I were healthy and didn't get sick with Lyme disease.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I think about that sometimes of like would I don't know, how would I have ended up if I had gotten more successful back then and been a jerk and or not gotten successful back then and been a jerk or I don't know, met Jen, we didn't stay together because I was an idiot or something. I, but again, like it sucked. Like
Yeah, no
it
doubt.
sucked so much. And every time I talk to somebody, it's always the same experience, sick forever, nobody could figure it out. They get diagnosed, and then it's just like, how are you feeling? And it's just but like they just start listing all the things and it just breaks my heart how many people this is happening to. I wouldn't wish this on there are a couple people in America that I would wish this on, depending on who's listening. Sorry, but it like we're not designed for it. We're just not,
No.
So, but I think that's a healthy way to look at it. Of like, I came out of it a better person. I don't know if I believe that. I maybe I do. Like, but when people would say, like, when I was really sick and people would be like, "This is happening for a reason," I would get so mad. I would be like, yeah, what's the reason? Because I haven't slept through the night in 2.5, you know what I mean? Just like I lost 45 pounds in a month and like it just it
Yeah, and look, I was that same way as well. Always triggered by everything. Some things
yeah,
I should have been triggered by, some things I should not have been triggered by based on the comments that I received.
yeah,
But I think that, there's a couple of, I think there are a few facts. The first fact is if you don't keep trying things to get better, you won't get better. And you had that right away. You're like,
yeah,
when people are questioning you, why are you spending this money if you're not getting better? Because if I don't do something, I'm not going to get better. And
And
it
I
may
was
not be
always
this thing,
like,
it'll be the next thing.
give me the highest, most intense, most potent dose of whatever. Like at some point, I just stopped researching, and I was like, "You're telling me this might work? Sure." I just didn't care. I just didn't care. It was just like anything,
Yeah.
anything. And obviously, that is not. And by the way, there's no way to know if like these 80 supplements I was taking and these years of antibiotics and all these things, like it's totally possible that all of those things got my body to the point where chelation and ozone would work.
I believe that. I actually very
Yeah.
much believe that for sure.
It's like it could have been that I started chelation and ozone 6 months earlier and it did nothing and I'm sick. I'm still sick. So there's like definitely luck involved, which is so crazy. Like
Yes.
you can do all the research you want. And by the way, I do just want to reiterate, I have been to some conferences where researchers have shared their work, and there are some absolutely brilliant people working very, very hard on this. And I do find a lot of hope in that because when you're in it and when you're just sick all the time, it's hard to be hopeful, but there will come a time where we can figure out what this is and how to get better. And I, I've met some researchers that are doing incredible work, and I would leave feeling so hopeful and light and happy. And that's just been in the last couple of years. So, but yeah, it's like so that's totally possible that all these things that I did, this crazy amount of stuff that I did, and then my body was like, "All right, give us the chelation and ozone now," and I did it at the exact right time, I'm so glad I did, and then I think there's two types of people who go through this. I think there's the types of people, and maybe I said this last time, but there's the types of people who go, well, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I never want to talk about it again, or
Yep.
that was the worst thing that happened to me, and I'm going to do everything possible that to make sure it never happens to anyone else. And
Yeah.
I think that's why Generation Lyme started. I think that's why you guys have done Tick Boot Camp. Is like
Yep.
I'm gonna make sure no, I'm gonna do whatever I can so that this doesn't happen to another person. And like that's been a big sacrifice for Jen, right? Like Generation Lyme, we've been having calls weekly for 6 years, and I've been hosting basically every Wednesday for 6 years. Shout out
You
the
still host every Wednesday?
I host almost every Wednesday. Yeah.
Wow.
I have researched this and I'm pretty sure this is a true statement. Generation Lyme, I believe, is the largest uh, provider of online support groups, which we call meetups, for Lyme disease in the world.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, for sure. I don't think you need to research that. I think you can just say that is the truth. Yeah.
like I've hosted the second most Lyme meetups on Earth, which is hilarious. But yeah,
Who did the most?
Brooke has done more than me.
Brooke. Okay.
Brooke has done like a lot more than me. But that is what makes it worth it to me is like so a lot of our meetups are monthly topic meetups. We base them off we based our meetups off like very broadly off of AA where there's a monthly topic and everybody shares and other people listen and it's a safe space. And then the one I host on Wednesday, we really wanted to have one where like people could just come with all their questions and grievances and thoughts and whatever. So we call that burning questions, and that's on Wednesday. And like when there's somebody who's newly diagnosed and they have a billion questions, and there's all these people on the call that have been dealing with this stuff for years, and they're giving answers, and you see the relief on that person's face, and you see them get emotional, and they're being welcomed into that community, into our community. Like people just having people sign on to one of our calls and seeing a bunch of different people they've never met that might not look like them, be their age, come from the same background, but they're all connected in this one way. Like that moment is what makes what happened to me worth it, you know? And so,
Yeah.
but that being said, like my wife and I haven't got out to dinner on a Monday or a Wednesday in, in 6 years. So but she knows how important it is to me, because it is. And I'm lucky to have a partner who, after everything we've gone through, like never argues, never complains, never is like, oh, you're still doing this stuff. Like, no, she gets it. This is like, I'm gonna do this forever. I talk about Lyme disease at every show. Uh, and no matter if I'm playing for 10 people or 1,000 people, I play to 10 people way more than I play to 1,000, but I like playing to 1,000 better. There's somebody in the room who needs to hear what I'm saying, whether it's because they're sick or they know somebody who's sick or they're dealing with something heavy and they're freaked out about it. And it would be disingenuous for me not to talk about it. I have a printed out piece of paper with a possible list of Lyme symptoms that I have on my merch table now because I got so tired of pulling it up on my phone and showing it to people. I just hand it to them. And like I'll go into a high school and like talk. I was just at a high school recently working with a bunch of theater kids. There's probably 45 of them. And like I was talking about Lyme, and one of the girls was like, "Oh, I just got diagnosed with lupus." And then this other person was like, "I just got diagnosed with lupus." And then this other person was like, "I got diagnosed with this weird like joint thing." And I was like, "Is it called EDS?" And they were like, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "Okay." And I pulled up this like it was in Long Island. Half of those kids have Lyme disease probably
Yep.
and
Yep.
don't know it and are just walking around, and that's what breaks my heart too, is young people. Like if you get this in elementary school or middle school, you think that how you're feeling is normal, that like that pain and that anxiety and that fatigue is like that's what everybody's dealing with, and it's just not. And that just breaks my heart so much. Like we're failing these young people so much. um anyway, sorry, I got
No,
back.
I couldn't agree more. But let's talk about now. Let's transition into the pandemic
Yeah.
and what that was like for you. And then it sounds like you got sick again and relapsed back in 2020.
Yeah. So it was 2021. It was like March of 2021. We got a puppy who's here. He's sleeping on the couch because I gave him trazodone. He's the cutest thing
Ah,
ever. Um, and we got our puppy, and very common. He had a parasite called Giardia,
yep.
and 2 weeks later, I got the symptoms of Giardia, and they lasted 4 years. And I went to and then also like some fatigue stuff and whatever. I think a lot of it was just from the antibiotics that I had taken, and my gut was so messed up. But like I couldn't leave the house. I was going crazy, and it was the same thing again, right? Of like people downplaying what was happening to me, doctors telling me there was nothing wrong, like losing a ton of weight, having these crazy symptoms again. Like so it like brought all of that back, and actually lasted longer than the first time. But again, I'm like doing all this research and trying to figure out what was wrong, and like uh so it in some ways it was even worse mentally because I knew what it was like to feel well, and then to go back to like being bedridden and not being around people and isolating. And even though, I mean, for a lot of the pandemic we were isolating anyway, we didn't leave a 10 block radius of our apartment for 18 months at one point during the pandemic because I was so freaked out about it, and we were living in basically a 700 square foot box.
Wow.
Again, my wife, it's amazing that my wife is stayed married to me. And then I found a treatment called FMT, which if you're having stomach stuff, you should look that up. I went through
That's
it.
the fecal microbiota transplant.
Sure is, which is like not even the 10th craziest thing I ever did in my life. And I went through a lab in California called the Purety Clinic, Purety. They were amazing, super patient and kind, and answered all my questions, and way cheaper than trying to get it through insurance. I mean, still cost a lot, but like that really saved my life. I did a couple rounds of that, and but it was amazing. Like when I did that, like it helped my nervous system too. It helped me sleep through the night. But yeah, I mean, oh, and then during that time also, I woke up one day and I have double vision now. And so like so now, which I literally I just woke up and all of a sudden I was seeing two of everything. So now I wore contacts for 20 years, and now I have to wear these special glasses because if I look at you on the screen, I'm seeing two of your head. And like And again, that just like happened one day. And like some of it runs in my family, but no one's gotten it before they're 75. So like probably a Lyme thing. I've been having some weird stuff with my ears where I'm getting this like thumping noise in my ears. Of course, that can be caused by Lyme. So it's just always there in the background all the time. And
Was this a relapse of Lyme, do you think? Or do you think, like, in your mind, did the parasitic infection from your dog trigger a relapse of Lyme? Or do you think this was another illness? Like, where do you land on that?
I think that I don't know. I think the parasitic infection, I think from everything that I had done to my body, it didn't allow my body to fight off that infection. But also, I never came back positive for like for years until I did like like IGeneX. Like I went to like a special lab and it came back positive for all of these things, obviously. But yeah, again, everyone told me I was fine. But I had a lot of the mental symptoms came back in a big way, like in a scary way. Um, but like I didn't have like the crawling sensation under my skin. I didn't have the fatigue. So it's possible that just like my body was messed up from the first time and couldn't heal itself the second. Um, yeah. But again, I don't care. I just couldn't leave the house and
Right. You're sick, right? You're
wanted to
you're
get
you're homebound
well.
again.
Yeah.
What
So
what was the so FMT? Walk us through what it is, what the process was like, and how it helped you.
yeah, so FMT is basically fecal matter transplant, and they basically screen uh, these donors, and there's this whole long list of things like you can't ever have taken antibiotics, you have to be under a certain age, they do genetics tests on you. There's like all these things they do, and literally, like people donate samples of their poop, and then you either do it. I love that I'm saying this out loud into a microphone. You do it like through an enema, or you can do capsules. I did a combination of both. There's a clinic in the UK that does it that I was gonna go to, but it was like crazy, crazy expensive, and you don't do all of the treatments there. You have to bring the enemas back through customs in dry ice. And they literally said to me, mostly it's not a big deal. And I was like, I can't even, because I don't know about you, but like I used to get stopped. I used to play in Canada a lot, and I had a whole suitcase full of medication.
Yep.
And I would get pulled to the side. What is this? What are you doing? Why do you need all this? I'd have a doctor's note. Like it got sketchy a couple times. So anyway, the FMT basically repopulates your gut microbiome with someone else's healthy gut microbiome. And it's really hard to wrap your head around, and like it really, really, really helped. It took about 6 weeks to kick in. And then it was amazing. I felt amazing for a long time, and then it's sort of gone up and down. It's manageable now. Like I'm not like 100%. I don't know what 100% better feels like anymore. But the best I can do is like I feel pretty good right now. I'm able to live a full life right now. I'm able to exercise. I'm able to work. I'm able to spend time with people. I'm able to travel. Like I'm able to have a relationship with my wife. I cannot stress enough because the ketamine therapy is new. It's all I've been talking about. Like half my friends are going to go do ketamine therapy because it literally rewires the neurotransmitters in the neuropathways in your brain. And I think just from the Lyme and the trauma, like I needed that. And
Yeah. But before we go on to the ketamine,
yeah,
what's really interesting is, so pulling it even further back, a study came out last year, actually it was earlier this year, that
yeah,
was talking about the gut microbiome and biomarkers that are traits and commonalities in all chronic Lyme patients.
mm,
And they found that all chronic Lyme patients have an excess of one particular gut microbe in your gut microbiome and a significantly reduced amount of another one that normal patients have. So they directly correlate. I think it was three different types of microbes. I think two of them were suppressed, one of them was elevated in all chronic Lyme patients. And the thought of the study was the gut microbiome is a direct connection to why people remain ill with chronic Lyme.
yeah,
And then you couple that with antibiotic overuse, right, with our ancestors over time, living in a clean environment, not being exposed to things, in a first world country like America, our microbiomes are not what the microbiomes of our ancestors used to be. So you take your great 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 grandpa and
Right.
compare his gut microbiome to yours, it looks nothing like it, right? Yours is sanitized. It's 1/100th of what his was from a diversity standpoint. And that matters because that helps you fight pathogens like Lyme disease, right? Your immune system is a big part represented in your gut. So when you look at that, it makes sense why FMT is successful because our microbiomes are so sanitized. So I just wanted to kind of put in that little dialogue. And what are your thoughts on that piece?
I think one of the things that I learned throughout that process is we know so little about our gut microbiomes. We know so little about the impact it has and how to what should be there, what shouldn't, how to get better, like how it impacts the rest of our bodies. We're just now finally starting to look into that. I would also say like what contributes to what you just talked about is like processed foods and sugar
Yes.
and just the way that we eat here versus the way that like they eat in Europe, for instance, or Asia. Like it's so in first world countries in Asia, like we're getting so many more chemicals here. And that my diet has really changed a lot. Like the majority of my diet is like food. I make fun of my mom because I go to her house and I'm like opening all the cabinets and the fridge and I'm like, none of this is food. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's in a box. It's not food. Like, where's the food? But even Jen has a video on her phone from when I first got sick where I'm trying to buy a can of tuna and I'm in the tuna aisle and I'm picking each can up to read like what's in it. And it took me like 10 minutes to find one that I thought was going to be the safest. You know what I mean? Like it's just we and even there's a difference between like in New York, we're so spoiled because there's like everything's you can get everything organic and really fresh and super healthy and it's just there's a difference between New York and Georgia, like in the grocery stores even. Um, Obviously you can get a lot of really great stuff here and there's farmers markets here, but it's so much easier in New York, I found, to like eat really really healthy that I sort of took for granted. But yeah, I mean like no one mentioned that to me for the 4 years, right? Like we should check for these three biomarkers because there's again just so much we don't know. So I was just going
Yeah.
to GI doctors. I just kept getting an IBS diagnosis and arguing with them that's not a real diagnosis. That just means you don't know what's wrong with me.
But
And
your symptoms were so far beyond IBS, right? It
right,
wasn't just stomach issues. You had all these other
right,
systemic issues, a multiple system illness. So they're focusing on your gut and IBS, but what about all the other, your vision, your neurology, right? Your, all these things, your psychology, your physiology. It's just wild. So
yeah,
yes, I mean but think about what you did, right? As I'm kind of putting together a pattern in my head.
yeah,
You reset your gut because your gut needed to be reset like a computer. Your computer's stuck. You turn it off, you turn it back on, you clear the memory, right? I'm oversimplifying something. But then you had to reset your nervous system because your nervous system was haywire. And your nervous system was haywire again, to your point, our foods, our, high-paced lives, technology, our modern world is stressful. Never mind chronic illness, never mind chronic Lyme. Your nervous system was a disaster. So the ketamine, I believe, reset your nervous system after you reset your gut microbiome, which put your body in a better sort of factory reset state for better wellness, right? I mean, what do you think?
I didn't actually know what feeling calm meant definitely as an adult, maybe as a kid. But like my normal, even when I was like hanging with friends and there wasn't anything wrong, was probably like a 9 out of 10 where and I like the amount of things that I needed to take to sleep, plus I was using cannabis because I was in New York, it's legal there. But like I took like 7 or 8 different things at night, like uh to like make my nervous system go down and beta blockers and melatonin and all these things. But I was so wired. I used to literally lay in bed exhausted with my heart pounding even though it was within normal range because it was less than 100. And I was like, why is my heart rate 89 at 1:30 in the morning? And they're like, oh, that's fine. Um, I just didn't know until my first ketamine treatment. Like I woke up the next day and I waited for that like that surge of adrenaline to come because I literally the way that I describe it is I felt like I was just constantly being chased by a bear.
Yeah.
That's how my body felt. And I think the ketamine rewired something in my brain and got rid of inflammation. Whatever it did, like my nervous system is at like a 1. Like I just had the experience of like sitting and not and just like and I'd never had that before. And that it doesn't mean my circumstances have not changed. Like things still go wrong and the dog barks too much and like we drop something and break it, we forget a thing. But I can react to it in a healthy way and not in the way of someone who's so like this close to losing it all the time. And that's new. And that has allowed Jen and I to start really having conversations about the last 10 years and what that's been like for her. And like that has really healed our relationship a lot very quickly. Because she would say, well, this happened and I felt this way. And I would go, of course you felt this way. Here's why you felt this way. Because I wasn't like trying to explain it or defend myself or because I could see it from a fresh perspective and like my career did I think when I was almost 40 that I like my career would look the way it does right now? No. Is this the way my career looks? Yes. If I actually pay attention, do I have signs all the time that I'm doing the right thing? Yes. Like I write exactly the songs that I write, exactly the way I want to write them, and they reach people and they make a difference. Meanwhile, I was laughing because I thought we were going to come on here and just talk about the song, and now I'm talking about FMT for like 30 minutes, which I think is hilarious. But also
But this is what our
really
listeners
important.
want. They want to hear all this, right? This is
Right.
gold.
Yeah. So it's like that ball of rage that had been sitting in my body for years just like went
Yeah.
just went away.
I really think ketamine so ketamine, there's multiple sides to it. Some people view it as a bad tool because if ketamine helps a chronic Lyme patient, it can be misconceived that Lyme is not a real physical problem because people believe ketamine is used for depression and psychological conditions,
Well,
right?
that's what I was using it for. They
So,
like yeah.
right. But look, most chronic Lyme patients are depressed. Most have anxiety. Most have dysregulated nervous systems. It's a byproduct of the infection and the physical illness.
Yes.
So when you start treating the infection and decreasing the microbial load, you have to address the psychological, which was caused from the physiological. And I think that's where this plays a role. So I just want to be clear for you listening that that's why I think this works. And what put us onto this before, right as we started Take Boot Camp, the first person we spoke to in the chronic Lyme community is a local person who lives in the same town as Rich and I. She was in a wheelchair, young, in her late 30s from Lyme disease. Married woman, was crippled, couldn't function, had brain fog, like one of the worst cases we've ever seen. She went, started Dr. Rolls's Restore Kit, and got ketamine. We watched her. Within 6 months, she was walking and running a business. It was insane. So that's why we were big onto Dr. Rolls early on because we saw this happen. So, ketamine, I think looking back, reset her nervous system. And I think the Restore Kit helped significantly reduce the microbial burden of all the things, the tick-borne infections, the viruses, the parasites, all the things that were able to flourish. And when you calm the nervous system and you calm the microbes, you're in a good place of homeostasis and you can sustain that. So I think what you're saying is just reinforcing what we've learned over the last 6 years from running Take Boot Camp.
And it also separates like because I'm doing an IV of it. There's lots of different ways to do it. There's like a nasal spray, there's pills, there's injections. I'm doing an IV, which again, because I always like to do, I want to do the strongest version of everything. And the way that I'm doing it is like you are having a completely dissociative experience. Like your physical body doesn't even exist, which sounds insane. But like if I could have had that experience when I was really sick, just to take a break from my own body, just to separate myself from the trauma of what had happened to me. Yeah, I wish I had done this years ago, like years ago. It would have been so helpful just to get rid of being sick is hard enough. Being sick and full of rage it's twice as hard. So I recommend it to everybody. There's lots of different ways to do it. You can do like a lower dose and like talk to a therapist, have a therapist talk you through it. I think that's really helpful. But yeah, for me, it's just been an unbelievable tool. It saved my life. It saved my career. It saved my marriage fully 100%. Because even though I wasn't having the physical symptoms of Lyme anymore, my brain, it wasn't like I used to say when I was really sick, this isn't me. Like, you have to understand this isn't me. And when I get better, I'll be me. And then I got better and it still wasn't me. And I'm finally, the reason why so many people in my life are like looking into it is because my second treatment, I came down from the experience and sat in the chair and took a deep breath. And my first thought that I had was, I am grateful to be alive. Which, if I'm being really honest, I hadn't had that thought since I got sick the first time in 2013.
Wow.
And that's a long time. Not as in like I was in any danger of harming myself. I don't want to say that, but like the gratitude of being here, like, was gone. I was like, what is this? Like, my health sucks. My relationship sucks. I'm not working. I don't have any money. Like, what are we doing? This is terrible. And so my circumstances haven't changed, but my relationship to my circumstances has completely changed. And that has been so powerful of like, it's just been wild. And so now like people who I haven't talked to in a long time are like, something happened to you. What is it? And that's what it is. It's like I look at ketamine as like chelation and ozone as like the two things, and FMT, like those three things over the last 10 years of my life have saved my life health wise. Like those are that's like my pyramid of sanity.
So Morrison Center, Dr. Jerry Simons is the one who you used for chelation and ozone.
Yeah.
Purity Clinic is where you did the FMT. Where did you do the ketamine?
It's just called the Atlanta Ketamine Center. They're really sweet. I was gonna do it at my psychiatrist's office, and he was like, "Don't do it here. Do it at the Atlanta Ketamine Center. It'll be cheaper, and you won't have to go through." It's out of pocket, obviously, but like, they're really lovely. They're really great doctors. It's like a family-run business. But there are ketamine centers. Like now that I've been talking about it, like, first of all, every couple that I talk to about it, they just look at each other and go, "When are you starting ketamine?" But like they have ketamine centers everywhere. I I just the way that I describe it is like my first ketamine treatment was 30 years of therapy in
Wow.
in an hour and a half. Like all the stuff I got about like focusing on my career and not my family and taking Jen for granted and like not being a partner to her and also like fighting to not for my life to not look the way that it looks and like fighting being in Atlanta, fighting my career the way that it is and getting that it's supposed to look like this and I'm supposed to be in Atlanta and I'm with this amazing person and like I would have gotten all of that 30 years from now when we had two kids and hated each other and got divorced and it took an hour and a half. Like I literally wrote like 4 pages in this notebook and read them to my wife and it changed both of our lives. Like I can't and I'm still in therapy. And I love therapy and I have gotten a lot out of it. But not like I'd rather do it quick, man. I don't have time. Like
Yeah, this is a hack and a shortcut, but a great one. So this is
yeah.
exactly what our listeners want to know.
Yeah.
So, Jesse, what is next for Mr. Ruben? What do you see coming next? You seem to be doing really well. You're an extremely talented man. So, what do you got in the hopper?
It's a great question. I've been, so first of all, because I took all these years off, like I have so many songs. I've got the next two albums written, so I'm going to be doing a bunch of recording. I'm also trying to play as much as possible, but I'm doing more, uh, mostly for financial reasons, like playing at venues. Like venues overheads are so high right now that I've really started embracing like concert series, house concerts, things like that. Like I can make twice as much money playing to 30 people in a living room than I can to 100 people at a venue.
That's
So
nuts.
it's nuts. So I've been like trying to find all these different house concerts up in the Northeast. I'll be in the Northeast a little bit. There's a bunch down here. There's some in Florida. Generation Lyme, we're going strong. We're going into our seventh year. I'm going to be doing
Congrats.
some.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been crazy. I think we're like approaching 20,000 people on our like that we've served. I can't imagine how
Wow.
many downloads you guys have. Um,
Yeah, it's wild. But it's a group effort. It's look, I could never do. I've come to your support groups and they're fantastic. But I'm there for me. The emotional drain is strong. So I credit you guys. It takes a certain type of person, to provide that support. And even people that provide therapy services like Christina Consalvalos, I always say, man,
yeah.
I don't know. Talk about nervous system. I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd get sick
Yeah.
again.
For sure. I mean, it's there are days where like I'll come back upstairs and Jen's like, "How was it?" And I'm like, "This was a tough one," you know? And then sometimes it's great. So, focusing on still doing Generation Lyme, still trying to do as much advocacy work as possible. Like I hate that I missed like some of the stuff that's happening in New York, but like
Yeah,
um
like you
I'm
missed us in New York City at Fashion
yeah,
Week. I
yeah,
know.
just
Come
at
on.
Fashion Week. I know, and the photos looked amazing and um so yeah, I'm like this is sort of my like third time around restarting my career. So I'm just like all the stuff that I had too much ego to do. Like I'm going to conferences, I'm driving to Nashville, I'm hanging like meeting new people, like all this stuff that I thought I was much too good for. My wife and I are freezing embryos in February. We're gonna have a family at some point. That was never gonna happen 5 months ago, like ever. I was out. Um, and like what I realized, like my biggest thing that I realized is like I'm not here to be like a worldwide superstar. I'm here to have a good life. And what that means is like making art that I enjoy and making spending time with my family and doing things for fun. Like that's what I've been talking about with my therapist is like I have all these books I haven't read. I have instruments I haven't played. I haven't learned a new skill in years because I've been working so hard, or sick. And so like just trying new things and trying to be not trying to, but like experience happiness in a time when it's really hard to do that in the world. It's a really tough time to be an empathetic person in the world, you know?
For
And
sure.
but yeah, I love playing shows. I'm gonna play as much as I can. I'm gonna release as many songs as I can. I'm gonna help as many Lyme patients as I can. Hopefully raise a good family, and that feels like a pretty good life. And maybe at some point I'll come back on this podcast and I'll talk about how I got to sell out stadiums because I played a song called Monster a bunch of times.
Yes. Well, Jesse, I am grateful for you. We and the entire community are grateful for you.
I
You've
appreciate
already done some amazing things. I mean, so many amazing things for our community, from funding to research to support groups to advocacy to helping people just navigate the ugly sea of treatment. But we know you're going to continue to do even more. And we're excited to have you back on the podcast, as you just said, to give us an update in the future. And I just can't thank you enough for joining our podcast and sharing all of this information. And everybody listening, you have to go to the show notes. You have to check out all of Jesse's excellent work, especially the Monster song. The Monster is just man, it hit me, right? And
Yeah.
again, Rich, an old man who's like, he's my favorite artist. I can't believe it. Like, your music touches so many people across so many different walks of life. So no matter what your preconceived notions are, you have to listen because it's such a powerful, powerful list of songs that you have out there.
Man,
So
I knew there was a reason I was coming on this podcast.
yeah.
I think I've come to a point where like the people who like what I do really like it and really need it, you know? And it's not maybe not for everybody, but I think there are some things about the human experience that are so universal that like uh I appreciate that. I want to play for everybody. The concept of a target audience has always annoyed me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm easy to find on the internet. Check out the new record is called Belong. I have it on CD if you are living in the 90s. I also have it on vinyl. This is my first album I've ever pressed to vinyl, so if you want one of those, the kids these days are getting into vinyl. I can ship you one of those. Um, and yeah, just check out the tour dates. If I'm coming to a city near you, come hang out. The house shows are super chill, and I get to like meet everybody, and it's great. It's like a hang, and then everyone gets
Yeah.
to listen to me play songs. I
So the
will.
next,
I'll be in
sorry,
Long Island soon too, so
that's
I'll
what I
let
was going to
you know.
say. The
Yeah.
next tri-state area one, Long Island, New York City, we will be there, and we're going to share it. So keep an eye on our social media because Rich and I will be there, and anybody who wants to come with us locally should come as well because we're going to get to meet everybody in person, see Jesse again, and have a good time. So Jesse, thank you again. We're going to continue to have you back on for updates, and we just can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing out there.
It's my pleasure. Also, I can't. Isn't it amazing when you get a bunch of Lyme people in a room together? Isn't that amazing?
It is. It
I
is. It
know.
is a surreal, amazing experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate getting to talk to you. And I hope people listen. I hope it helps. And yeah, I'm easy to find if you have questions or about. And check out Generation Lyme. We host meetups. We've got a lot of resources. Um, our website has a bunch of stuff for supporters, families, financial stuff, to find a doctor. Like we got everything you need if you're just getting started on this. So thank you for having me, and you guys are the best.